What definitely it's not the job of born-again Christians to aid and abet and be a part of and be led astray and led into a revolutionary war where then other Christians across the country can be arrested and killed. What is the job of the tribulation saints? What has God called us to do? And it's not to bear arms. And what are you seeing that it's going to be the job of, and what are Christians to do during these days?
Well, right now we're to be exposing this. We are to be a peaceful people. When the soldier asked Jesus what he should do, Jesus said, "Do violence to no man." We are not to take up arms against our government. We are even to pay taxes. The job of the church is to preach the gospel. And in the early church, when the persecutions were so terrible, never once did Paul or any of the apostles, or even, if we recall the words of Jesus, never once did he talk about physical opposition to the authorities, but rather winning them to Christ, even if it means our death.
And matter of fact, the death would help people wake up and see what's happening, and more we get saved. So, and that's just exactly what happened. It's always happened. Before reading your stuff, we've got a storm coming. I hope it doesn't hit all the equipment, all that lightning striking around us. But one of the things, all your wonderful intelligence background and military background, these are wonderful. This is fabulous because it definitely helps us see. But one of the things I started noticing, because I've given a lot of money to focus on the family research over the years, 20 years. What I started noticing in the last few years was that, number one, that they were not exposing all the truth. And what I saw was the big thing was that they were not exposing the fact that the partial birth abortion, here they've been pro-life all these years, yet they didn't. I read the bill, and it was not a pro-life bill. It said to kill children at the navel. And that focus on the family and this group, none of these groups were exposing that, even after I would call them. So that was a big red flag. And then they started pushing the marriage amendment, which anybody has any first-grade knowledge of our Constitution and of law, our government, for our Congress to define marriage would destroy marriage. And not only that, George Bush's Marriage Defense Act was going to allow for civil unions. So it was going to, in a sense, help sodomite marriage come into being. And all these same groups were pushing that. And the third thing that just took me off the edge was their promotion of the passion. And I said, that's it now. That I'm able to, these people are exposed by, number one, what they're not telling us, and then what they are pushing for sure. And such as James D. Kennedy, you were talking about him just a few minutes ago on his book that he brought out, James Kennedy, and how his unbelievable connection with evangelism explosion, and but what he's getting ready to do here in this next week is he's going to start teaching the true history, Christian heritage of our country. Well, someone called me yesterday. People, Kelly, we have a Christian country. I said, they were Freemasons that found this country. I think that's been propaganda all along by most of these front groups, that we have a Christian country. What do you think?
Yes.
And James Kennedy's getting ready to have a big, 60,000 people group, and he's going to teach the true Christian heritage of America with David Barton and all the other CMPers.
Well, we have an expose of the Founding Fathers on our website, and the fact that they were deists and theists. Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. There is a huge museum in Arlington, Virginia, dedicated to George Washington, who was a Freemason.
He was Grand Marshal of his Freemason place while he was president.
Yes. But this is what is being promoted, the idea that this is a Christian nation, and that where these Freemasons are leading the nation is back to the Christian foundations, which is nothing more than Freemasonic.
Freemasonic. Yeah, instead of Christian heritage, it's the Mason heritage.
That's right.
And we have a Mason heritage. We have a Mason religion being put into place in this country is what we had.
Yes.
And they let it be, but they purposely allowed it to be destroyed. Part of the dual dialectic is destroying marriage so you have a crisis. The other side can then use it to say, give us your money and we'll help protect marriage. And so you have that dual conspiracy going there.
Yes, and with this marriage amendment, Christians are being told, well, we have to compromise. We have to change the language of this amendment so that we can get it passed. But what it does is to allow homosexual unions under another name.
Well, we don't need a marriage amendment because we already have 200 years of laws that say marriage between a man and a wife. We just need someone to enforce the law, and they won't do it. We did have a law put in place during the Clinton administration, which was the Defense of Marriage Act, but George Bush wouldn't enforce that law. See, that's another thing. It's when they pretend that there's a crisis. They create this crisis, such as the war on drugs, or now this new crisis of amphetamines or whatever that their people are making and blowing themselves up at their house. Now I have to register when I buy a cold remedy.
Yes, and we had the same thing going on with stem cell research.
Right.
George Bush's policy is more liberal than Clinton's policy was, but we had all of
all the pro-life groups telling us what a wonderful pro-lifer he was.
Yes.
The whole time he's a pro-abortionist.
Yes, talk about a mind bend.
Right. And the thing is the problem is that most Christians today's mind can bend, and they bend it to and fro. They toss these people to and fro. They're claiming that Bush is a Christian and that he's pro-life, and yet he's not pro-life. He doesn't have a pro-life bone in his body. Frisk, anyways, it is a mind bend. So this is very good. I'll tell you, that's how the groups are being exposed to be by now what they are not exposing, such as John Lofton never exposed that he worked with Mooney for 12 years. Well, that was a big red flag.
And it should be.
Yeah, and not only that, he worked with Rushdoony, he's worked with all these Dominionists. So that was a big flag. And so I went, whoa, these people cannot be trusted. The whole people behind the Constitution Party. What is interesting to me is through your book, The Next Revolution, is the connections with all of these people and their bloodlines, such as go through some of the bloodlines of Phyllis Schlafly and Pat Robertson and Pat Buchanan, and their bloodlines are pretty amazing. And the head of that started John Birch Society.
That's true. In many cases, we're able to identify that certain people are members of this Merovingian bloodline. And not in all cases, and in many times, they've changed their names. It's hard to trace. But that's what's been so amazing to us and really has validated our research on the Merovingian conspiracy.